Hello, everybody. This is Charles with the Ravori Sports Podcast. Like and subscribe to all of our social media content here in the Ravori Sports universe. Here, we're gonna have a good time here. We're gonna have a good guest here for you. So definitely check us out here on all of our Ravori Sports Podcasts. Genesis Notary Services /Facebook.com. If you live in the Winchester, Virginia area, if you know, the Valley. RavoriSports.company.site. Definitely, this is where you get Ravens, jerseys, hats, etc. on our website. Well, definitely, it's a great place to get all of our merchandise as well. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're on several platforms, Rumble, Spotify, etc. But definitely subscribe on the YouTube channel so you can get that squared away. And Raven fans, Oriole fans, we got a guest. We would treat him correctly, even though you see what's in the background there. That Steelers stuff there. Big Rich from the Driving to the Top podcast here. Thank you very much for joining us here as well. You can check him out. A lot of our stuff, one of the reasons why I wanted to have Rich is it's on our channel as well. So the wrestling, which I've been a wrestling fan for 40 years. The NASCAR, which is getting a lot of engagement there. Also to the Steel City. Where they're talking football, baseball, and all that stuff, etc. So Rich is doing a lot. And also to tell us about the radio station. Can you talk about the radio station you're actually at, working at?
The radio station I'm working at right now is called Retro FM. It's 102.1 in Albany, Georgia. I work remotely because I'm actually sitting in my home in Waco, Texas. But, I work remotely with these guys. It's a 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Music format, but we also do some sports. We do high school football, things of that nature, and it's definitely it's a little different format than what I've done in the past, but not too far off. Fortunately, in 21 years, I've done pretty much everything except classical and like speed metal. Those two formats I've never done. I've worked pretty much all the other ones.
What is speed metal? I don't know what that is.
Head-banging thrasher, remember the old skateboarder stuff that you just
Yeah. The 80s. I think about that like when I hear
Yeah, but there are stations out there that play just that stuff. Makes my head hurt.
All right, so let's get to it, man. We're going to start out. We're going to start out with the draft, and you. Let me tell you something. You were happy that the Steelers didn't draft Shedeur Sanders, and so was I. We're on the opposite side. I think he's a good quarterback, and I did not want to see Pittsburgh, being a Raven fan, draft Shedeur. I didn't want to see the Browns draft him either. You tell me why you're so in the camp of, because man, it is really polarizing. There is one group that thinks he's great, and the other group that just why? Where are you on that why?
Well, my why is a lot different than what some people's are. A lot of people's why is it's because he's Deion's kid. I don't care that he's Deion's son, because I think Shiloh's actually a pretty good ball player. And I don't think Shedeur is horrible. I just don't think that he is as good as everybody hypes him up to be. The sizzle is there, the steak isn't. And he being in Big 12 country, I live 15 minutes from Baylor University. I saw Colorado all season. I saw Colorado last year. There was very poor decision-making on his behalf, whether it was trying to throw the ball into a space that he couldn't get it to, or holding the ball too long and not dumping it when there was a pass rush coming. Those kind of decisions, which led to the 13-12 record that he had. And that's not – the 13-12 record isn't even what bugged me. Because if you look at Patrick Mahomes' record at Texas Tech, it was right around 500 too. It's not the record, it's the eyeball test. And when you watch Shedeur Sanders on that field, I don't see good decision making. I don't see that ability to think on his feet, and on top of everything else, he does not read defense as well. I watched, he probably could have had about 7 pick sixes on him last year if defensive backs knew how to catch footballs. You know, they always say there's a reason why defensive backs aren't wide receivers, because they're very guys. That's what it is. So when you consider that, the decision making, the inability to read defenses, that whole combination. Athletically, I mean, yeah, he's a good athlete. He's not a big kid. He's not a Josh Allen size guy or a Ben Roethlisberger size guy by any stretch, but he's big enough to hold his own. I go off the eyeball test, and what the eyeball test showed me is that he's not worth a first round pick. He definitely wasn't worth being number 1 overall, which he was for a while there on mock drafts before Cam Ward took that over.
I did watch the ESPN today. Kuiper, because everybody kept telling me Kuiper was going nuts.
Oh, he was.
And because this has never happened to him before. He's never had a guy he's touted as the number 1 guy fall all the way out of the first round like this. Never.
But he has had guys drop, because he was all over Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers came out. And we saw him plummet to, 22, 23 when Green Bay took him. So it's kind of a CYA situation for him. For those of you out there not familiar, cover your But he's trying to do that because you're right. I mean, he was all over Shedeur. And as he was just going, think, okay, he's going to the Saints. Didn't go to the Saints. Okay, he's going to the Steelers. Not going to the Steelers either. And then I'm sure whenever the Giants jumped up, I'm sure in his heart of hearts, he's going, okay, he's going to the Giants. Even though we all knew, even when we were doing our show last night, we all knew it was going to be Jackson Dart, which absolutely kills me. But we knew it was going to be Dart. It wasn't going to be Sanders.
All right. And I'm only looking at this not to be disrespectful during the course of the conversation, but it relates to this. So the Browns just passed again on Shedeur.
They did.
They took the linebacker Schwarzenegger, which I think is really overdrafted, and Quinshon Jenkins. So they didn't take him again in the second round. So that's really telling.
And that also, you think about it for a second though, that also says something about somebody else, because that's the wrong running back from Ohio State.
Oh, I think, the running backs, I think it was 50 cents of one and half and dozen of the other. I think if you want Jenkins, if you want the bruiser, then you take Jenkins. If you're a float your boat, if you want the guy, the acrobat, the guy like with the burst and everything, you would take Henderson. I think that was different. But I think that's a very that says a lot. That there's a team, because they got no quarterback. No. They're starting a guy our age at quarterback, Joe Flacco. And they're going to do that. I do think people are wrong about. I do think you're wrong about Shedeur in the sense of, like, we just had the last 2 picks number 1 overall. Jury's still out on them. Bryce Young and Caleb Williams. We were lauding their same type of improvising type of ability. So maybe that's working against them because they haven't quite worked out. But they're the same type of quarterbacks, and the other quarterbacks in this draft have a lot of questions. There isn't a lot of good quarterbacks. There's some good backup quarterbacks, like McCord. You like Will Howard. I like. I think Milroe. I think there's a question there, but there's not a hole to fill, and I think that's a tell. This is more than football. This is not just football criticism. Why you pass on a guy that was this successful in college, and then you just go in a different direction when you badly need a quarterback. The Browns badly. They're starting Kenny Pickett, man. They're competing with Joe Flacco, and they passed.
And I can understand your concept with that, but if you've listened to me talk about Caleb Williams on the show or on open mics or whatever, I feel the same way about Caleb Williams. I have said Caleb Williams from the jump is Ryan Leaf. I'm waiting for the bomb to drop because whenever he finally falls off the edge and people keep giving him all this, especially in a market like Chicago where they don't take any stuff. That's that blue collar Chicago, Philly, those markets. Those are tough markets. Green Bay. Whenever Caleb Williams gets to that point that he's taken too much criticism and rightfully deserved, he's going to pop. And when he pops, he's going to go full-blown Ryan Leaf, I firmly believe. And I don't think that Caleb Williams was the best quarterback in that draft last year.
That's bad saying Ryan Leaf. That's bad. That's about as bad of a miss as in NFL history. That's really bad.
And I think Caleb Williams is that way. I think that he didn't prove anything at USC to me that made me think he is a transcendent quarterback to be worthy of the number 1 overall pick, especially to a franchise like the Bears, who hasn't had a legit quarterback since Jim McMahon. And if you don't want to consider Jim McMahon as legit, you got to go back to Bobby Lane.
I consider
when our parents were born.
Yes. McMahon was really good except for the injuries. I think that's the only reason why he didn't. Yeah, I think that's the only. Kind of like Terrell Davis would have had a lot more record, would have did a lot more had he been able to stay healthy.
Oh yeah, Terrell Davis probably could have gone for the record if he stayed healthy. But when you look at now, Bryce Young, I think was a coaching situation. Bryce Young walked into an awful coaching situation. The coaching situation changed a little bit. They benched him last year for a little while. And what we saw the back half of last season from Bryce Young showed some glimmers of hope. I liked Bryce Young coming out, and I knew it was one of those, okay, Brown or CJ Stroud. It's like, okay, let's go to the ice cream shop, and you can have chocolate or vanilla. Either one's good. It's just a matter of which one fits you better. And I think that we're going to see a real good year out of Bryce Young, especially after the Carolina Panthers made that first-round pick getting T. McMillan, giving them another wide receiver to go with Xavier Legette coming into this season. Of course, Chuba Hubbard at running back. So I think that we're going to see a lot better Bryce Young this year. I don't know that Caleb Williams gets better. If the Bears go 6-11 this year or 7-10, then what? So I think we got similar situations with those two guys.
I think he gets traded to the Steelers.
Will you?
No, I don't. Hey. No, I don't. I don't think that. But that kind of brings me to the next point. What are the Steelers doing at quarterback? You don't like Shador. You're not getting Jackson Dart. You're starting Mason Rudolph at quarterback.
No,
that
we're
ain't
not.
Gonna work, buddy.
We're not.
I know Adam likes him. Well, who starts then?
I'll tell you what.
If you don't get Aaron,
I don't want Rodgers. I really don't. I still, in my heart of hearts, would love to see the Steelers figure out a deal to bring Kirk Cousins in from Atlanta. In a similar type deal to what happened with Denver, where Atlanta eats most of that salary because they overpaid him royally. Eat most of that salary, send him to Pittsburgh, and in the 3rd or 4th round, draft a Will Howard or a Dylan Gabriel or somebody like that who Cousins can work with for a year or so, get him ready, and then hand it off to him. Cousins is not a bad quarterback. He's crummy on prime time games, but he's not a bad quarterback in the grand scheme of things, and he's definitely a guy that I think could be a benefit to a young quarterback. Look at what he did help. I mean, Michael Penix, I'm sure, was learning off of Kirk Cousins the whole time he was there last year, and then finally Penix took over as the starter.
Kirk Cousins is not an upgrade over Russell. He's not. Aaron
over Russell Wilson?
Yeah, he's not an upgrade over Russell Wilson. He's about Aaron Rodgers is by a little bit. I think on Pittsburgh he'll be better because he's at better coaching, better personnel, etc. Franchise overall better, defense is much better. I think he'd be better. But I mean, you kind of seems like you're stuck in the middle. Remember the show Malcolm in the Middle kid, whatever. You know,
right.
Like you can't get bad enough to get a good player in the draft, and you can't get a really good quarterback. And I think like you got the same fate, you know, like 9-7, 8-8, etc. What can the Steelers do to get out of that 9-7, 8-8?
Well, I mean, bring Ben out of retirement. Because they really haven't had that guy at quarterback since Ben retired. And that's just being honest. The thing to look at too with the Pittsburgh Steelers especially on their defense, on their offensive line. That offensive line has not really been the greatest either. So it didn't matter who was back there. They weren't really getting protected very well. And that's been worked on too over the last couple of years. I'm a firm believer your team starts at the lines and works out. If your offensive and defensive lines are strong, you can build out from there. That's why I was so happy about the pick they did make last night. And by the way, sympathies to our first round draft pick. His mom. Did you hear about what happened with him?
Yeah. His mom passed away, and the last thing he said was, "Hey, I'm a Steeler." Right before his mom died. So the last thing his mom got to see him do on earth was get drafted to the NFL, which was very cool.
Right. Saw he was okay, and now she could go. So our condolences go to their family. But you know, you're building those lines. You got to have somebody to take the place of Cam Hayward when he retires in a year or two. This guy can fill that hole. But in you know, when we're looking at quarterback right now, I think we're gonna draft a guy 3rd or 4th round. I would like to get a veteran in. Follow me on this one. And I've been thinking about this ever since the Giants did what they did last night. The Giants right now have 4 quarterbacks in that room. What are the odds they cut Jameis?
If they're cutting somebody.
If they dump Jameis, well, Tommy DeVito's not going to help anybody. We already saw what Russ did, what Russ does in Pittsburgh. If Jameis gets cut, come on, Pittsburgh. Bring him in. A, he can play. He can still play. And B, he can work with a young quarterback. Or you were just talking about Cleveland. If Cleveland does get that quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round that they're looking for, and they let Flacco go, again, experienced guy, can play a little bit, and can be a good influence. They've got to have somebody, I think, at this stage of football. They got to have somebody that can kind of help one of these younger guys. Because like you said, they're not going to be bad enough to get a 1st, 2nd, 3rd pick. But at the same time, let's be perfectly honest, there's been a whole lot of really, really good quarterbacks that weren't top 5 picks. See the guy in Kansas City. And see the guy in Buffalo, for that matter.
One more thing on the Steelers. I'm gonna say Steelers. I say squirrels on my channel. I'm gonna say Steelers with you. Be respectful with you here.
That's all right.
I can't even have this conversation with Adam. He wants Tomlin gone. The temperature of Tomlin with the Steeler fans, I think more in the offseason now, he's kind of weathered it. I do think I think he's overstating it, but I think he's right. Like, how many times are you going to go out in the 1st round and do that? So where are you on Tomlin's stay or go? It's going to be 17 years for Tomlin there. As the head, I think it's 17 or 18 or something like that.
It's his 18th year. The Steelers have had 3 coaches in the last 54 years. Here's what I tell Adam on our show whenever we have this discussion, and it happens about once a month that this topic will come up. A, who are you going to get that's better? B, you've had a winning record 18 years, 17 years in a row. The Cleveland Browns and about half the league would die to have a winning record 17 years in a row. So I don't understand what you're complaining about. Yes, they get to the playoffs, and okay, maybe they lose in the first round, but they're there. It's the old poker analogy, chip in a chair. You got to get in to have a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Right. If you're Cleveland, Jacksonville, sorry, Dylan, Cleveland, Jacksonville, if you're one of these bottom dwellers, Arizona, the Jets, yeah, you don't think they would give their eye teeth to have the situation the Steelers have got right now? It's just one of the. I would rather get in every year and get knocked out than go 4-13, 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row, have a super high draft pick, and have a chance at that guy being the stud player that you want him to be, and have nothing around it. That's just me.
John Harbaugh got hired because of Mike Tomlin. He saw what Mike Tomlin did to Brian Billick, and he said, I want another young Mike Tomlin as a coach. That's why John Harbaugh got the job, okay? But I think there is a level of, okay, it's been so many years. Do you think Tomlin can take him to another Super Bowl and win it?
I do, but it's going to take a few years. I think it's going to take – I think they're at least 3 years away for a couple of reasons. When you look at the AFC right now, you've got the perennial Chiefs and Bills, okay? Those are your bulls of the woods. But you've also got a Chargers team with a second-year Jim Harbaugh. One of the I still say one of the top 6 or 7 quarterbacks in football in Justin Herbert. And, that team there is very possibly going to win that division, not the Chiefs. The Broncos last year, Sean Payton, Bo Nix, that whole crew, they showed what they can do, and they're going to contend for a playoff spot this year. The Houston Texans have shown what C.J. Stroud is able to do with a struggling second year, and his number 2, he didn't have his first 2 receivers.
Plays well at home, too. He's about automatic. I think people forget that. Like, young quarterback plays well on. He doesn't play as well on the road for whatever reason, but he plays very well at home.
And I'll tell you what, D'Amico Ryans is a phenomenal young coach. I mean, he's doing great things. Nico Collins is turning into a fantastic receiver. Tank Dell is a phenomenal number 2. They're going to be really good. You've got all these AFC teams, that Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. If they ever learn to play defense, it's over. If Cincinnati ever decides to play defense, they'll win Super Bowl after Super Bowl with that offense. But there are all those teams ahead of the Steelers.
But do you think Steeler fans, and I'm going to finish on that, but do you think most Steeler fans are where at of this? Because I think they more are than – because I think the rest of the league – I think your point is valid for the rest of the league. Everybody loves Mike Tomlin. He'd have a job in an hour. We know this, right? Mm-hmm. But what do you think Steeler fans feel like most of them? Because I talked to a lot of them, they're right there with that.
I think a lot of Steeler fans are frustrated that we have they're not looking at things – they're looking at everything through black and gold glasses. The legend of the Steelers is you win championships. We got 6 of them. You get to AFC championship games. We've been to 17 of them. Things of that nature, okay? You get to that point. But at the same time, you also have to look at the fact that you've got to rebuild every now and then, and coaches have to build. I look at Mike Tomlin as a more successful Marvin Lewis. Remember when Marvin Lewis was in Cincinnati and he was getting to the playoffs every year, and he got to the one Super Bowl and got beat, but he could not crack through the ceiling. Tomlin is at that point right now. Do I understand the frustration of Steeler fans? Yes. But if you look at it realistically instead of through black and gold glasses, I think if you sit back and look at it, first off, tell me who's going to take his spot, and we'll talk from there.
Okay. All right. So let's. You said something. We're going to shift a little bit here. I'm no fan of the Yankees at all, but
Okay.
you said Derek Jeter does not belong in the Hall of Fame.
That's not exactly what I said, but yes.
What
I said was
explain it to me.
What I said was that if Derek Jeter did not wear Yankee pinstripes, outside of the fact that he would not be in the Hall of Fame if he did not wear Yankee pinstripes. And the reason I say that is he never, and you got to follow with this, okay? He finished in the top 3 for MVP 3 times in his career. Okay. Now, when I look at a Hall of Famer, you need to be the dominant player at your position for a minimum of 5-year stretch. Okay? At no point in time was Derek Jeter the dominant shortstop in Major League Baseball. None. He won Rookie of the Year in 96. Congratulations. And yes, he made a ton of all-star teams. Does not make a lick of difference because we all know the starters in Major League Baseball all-star games are rigged. It's all rigged to either the big cities
fan vote
or whatever. Exactly.
Popularity contest. Yeah.
Right.
I don't think rigged is the right word, but popularity contest. You don't have to be the best player. Ozzie Smith won it for years. He definitely wasn't the best player, right? I got it.
Defensively, he's the best to ever step on the field. As far as
but it wasn't. I understand that, but he was Ozzie, right? Ozzie had a big family. Yeah. You're right about that.
But I mean, when you sit and you look at his numbers, okay, a career. As I'm looking at his numbers, 1,300 RBI, 260 homers. He had 350 stolen bases. He hit 310 for his career. But his last 2 years, he hit 190 and 256. Now, granted, in 2013, he only played 17 games, but he hit $190. He was Hall of Very Good, yes. The all-star things mean nothing to me. He won 4 Gold Gloves, 04, 05, 06, and 09. Okay. And I still kind of question those because you got a guy in Seattle named Omar Vizquel who's right there next to Ozzie Smith as one of the greatest defensive shortstops of all time. And then you got another guy named Alex Rodriguez playing shortstop in a part of that time. And you got
Rodriguez was overall a better player. That's correct.
And then there's a guy in Texas named Michael Young playing shortstop, all of which were better fielding shortstops than Derek Jeter was. That's why I say the preface to that statement was if he was not a New York Yankee, if he was a Kansas City Royal, does Derek Jeter have all these accolades and get in the Hall of Fame? No.
I'm gonna go to a whole different thing here for a second. Let's talk about Hall of Fame. We just saw WWE. I know you're a WWE Hall of Fame. Triple H, same type of career, right? Anybody that knows me and knows wrestling knows that I was not a Triple H guy. I said kind of the same things you're going. Like Jim Cornette, here's the guy that works with the guy that makes the money, right? He's had the machine behind him. He's had every good opponent. He kind of, to me, was the guy that was left after the Attitude Era. So they were kind of, he's the only guy left, rock and went on, retired, etc. Has a long career. You look at all the metrics, no question, though, Hall of Fame. And I think Jeter is kind of in the same category. No question he's a Hall of Famer. Great playoff player. But you're right when you say he was a tad overrated. I think both things can be true. You cannot be as great as people think you are and still be a Hall of Famer as a Yankee. And you're right about the New York thing. He was in New York. A lot of national media, women used to like him and all that, et cetera. So, so I think all that helped. Go ahead.
Well, but you brought up something too, and that's another part of it that drives me nuts about certain guys. He was a great playoff player. Doesn't matter. The playoffs don't matter. Otherwise, Curt Schilling would be in. Curt Schilling was dropped dead in the playoffs. Forget, you weren't hitting him in the playoffs. Regular season, he's a 500 pitcher. But in the playoff, and then you got the flip side of that. Greg Maddux is the greatest pitcher of his generation. Did not perform well in the playoffs. Maddux and Smoltz were lights out. But for some reason, Maddux just did not perform well in the playoffs.
You mean Glavine, Tom Glavine you're talking about?
Tom Glavine, yes. Tom Glavine and John Smoltz. Yeah. So you have to look at the whole body of work. And when you put the whole body of work together, regular season, 162 games, playoffs, 20 or 30 games, yes, I realize those and the other part of it too, I think, not to the largest degree, but that play against the A's that everybody has seen a gazillion times, that he flipped the ball behind his back to the catcher and they tagged out Jeremy Giambi. I think it was more of a Posada play than a Jeter play, but be that as it is. I'm a catcher, so that's where that comes in. But either way, that was my whole logic on it. The Hall of Very Good, and I'm with you with Triple H, okay? Should Triple H be in the Hall of Fame for his entire body of work? Yes. Because not only did he do what he did by himself, but he was also the foundation of two of the greatest factions in the history of WWE at the same time, with Evolution and DX. So you have, yes, he married the boss's daughter. I get that. But at the same time, he did put in, coming back from the torn quad, coming back from the injuries that he came back from. And then, of course, what he's done currently in his creative role and things of that nature. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Sure. Are there a bunch of guys in the Hall of Fame that shouldn't be? Yeah. Just like there shouldn't be. Someone please explain to me, and you're in the area, and I did radio 20 minutes from where he used to live or was born and raised. How in the name of God is Harold Baines in the Hall of Fame?
Harold Baines?
Yes.
Well, I think baseball's had a problem with Hall of Very Good for a while.
They have.
What's Scott Rowland doing?
Scott Rowland's another one, exactly.
I mean, that's just horrible. Why is Jeff Kent not in the Hall of Fame? Barry Bonds should be in. I think a lot of those guys should be in. I think you mentioned it the other day with Pete Rose. Now that he's dead, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be in at this point. He served a lifetime ban. But he's already dead. I mean, you ban him for life. He's dead, right? Let's go ahead and put him in, because otherwise he would belong. But go ahead.
Yeah, but man, it's integrity of the game.
It's even. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's even different than the steroid thing. That's integrity of the game. You're betting on your own team. That would be like, that's like the umpires doing that stuff. Steroids and all that is one thing, because I still stand by the fact steroids do not help you hit the ball. They help you hit it further. They don't help you throw the ball. They help you throw it harder. Okay? That's a whole different discussion. But when you mess with the integrity of the game, and I agree, I feel the same way about Gaylord Perry, by the way, should not be in. Sorry. I don't care, live, dead, or not.
I agree. Well, that's where I differ. I agree with that as long as he's alive. But a lifetime ban, I got married to death do you part. At that point, it's over. So it should be over. He should be allowed, or at least considered, to get in at this point. But you say no. You say no. You wouldn't. You would, if you had a vote, you wouldn't vote.
No.
Okay.
No. And the only reason that I would vote Bonds in, by the way, is because he had a Hall of Fame career before he went to the Giants.
I think Bonds, is the greatest player of all time. I mean, that's kind of my point. Like, how can you not have Barry Bonds? How can you not have a Roger Clemens in? How can you not? You get to the point where you're excluding so many guys, and now it's not a Hall of anything. Like, what's the point of having a Hall of Fame if the best players aren't going to be in it?
Yeah, and I mean, the best baseball player of all time is definitely a subjective discussion because there's a lot of guys you could put in there. You could say Willie Mays, you could say Hank Aaron, you could say Mickey Mantle, you could say Barry Bonds. There's several guys. It's not like the basketball discussion where there's two answers only. You can fight it out.
Actually, there are three answers. But
I understand, but my
I know where you're going.
I know the third choice. Yeah. My third choice, it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and that's it. Michael and LeBron are fighting for second. But, baseball, there's a little bit more of a population there on top of the hill, I think. 5 or 6 guys that you could say are the greatest of all time. The guys like Clemens and, Canseco, McGuire, guys like that, they were not Hall of Fame players at the beginning, which is why I say Bonds has that leg up. Bonds had 3 MVPs in Pittsburgh before he ever went to San Francisco. Bonds was on his way to a Hall of Fame career before he ever left Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think the tragedy of Bonds, is people forget how good he was in Pittsburgh. You talk about all he did with a Giant. I mean, he was, I think, had they held on to him, man, they really would have changed the fortunes of the whole franchise had they found a way to spend money and keep Bonds.
Yeah. If they kept Bonds, Bonilla, Drabek, those guys, absolutely. They could have gone on.
Even if you let those other guys go, had you kept Barry Bonds, like you would have, it would have made a huge difference. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. You are right.
I want to talk about, we talked about that. I thought that was a very fascinating point there. Let's talk about you, Rich. Like, you are working with Drive to the Top with us. How long have you been? You said you were in radio for how many years? Like 20 years? I did not know that you've been on a radio personality for 20 years.
May 11th will be 21 years I've been in radio. Yeah.
Okay. And has it been sports radio the whole time, or has it been other,
About 90% of it, yes. I have worked with other formats at the same time. But I've had sports in at least part of it, whether it was ESPN Radio Central Texas, whether it was CBS Sports Radio Central Texas, which was my baby that I grew from a pup, or whether it was ESPN Radio in Stanton, Virginia, that I was taking care of for a year, or what ended up. It ended up getting changed from the ESPN station there in Cambridge, Maryland, or ESPN in Peoria, Illinois, or the Fox Sports affiliate in Memphis. Yes, there's been sports radio, but at the same time, there's been other stations with it. Like in Peoria, we had 6 stations. We had a top 40 station. We had a station called Hippie Radio, 101.1, music for baby boomers. And our vehicle was literally a tie-dye wrap. It was very cool, actually. And I've done alternative, I've done country, I've done, top 40, hot AC. I've even done a station that I wish I could figure out what the exact name would be for it, but take 40s to the mid 50s music. Or actually, like big band and all that kind of stuff.
Big band music, yeah, big band.
Yeah,
we had one of those in Baltimore, yeah.
It's not elevator music, but it's the next step up from elevator music. And it's like, okay, and it's sitting over here on this AM signal that nobody, you got like 9 people that are listening to it, and their average age is Jerry Rice's number.
We had one in Baltimore because the only other thing they had was a sports radio show that I was. So that's how that's the reason I even knew what it was. So sorry.
But no. It's I've been very fortunate to do everything from sweeping the floor, literally, from sweeping the floors and doing all that kind of stuff to running the whole show. I took care of running a hip hop and R&B station. I've taken care of a sports station. I've taken care of running actually a couple of sports stations. I've taken care of running um, a hot AC format, one of those listen at work kind of deals. And but currently, I'm working with a classic hits station. It's 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, but sports is still there. Yeah.
That's kind of got to bring me to the next question. If you're doing a job in radio, why are you podcasting sports? And where's the Pittsburgh kid actually? I heard everything but Pittsburgh, I think, as far as your Pittsburgh connection.
I'm originally from Pittsburgh. I was born 30 miles outside of Pittsburgh. And we moved to Arlington, Texas when I was about 7. I lost both my grandmothers within 10 months of each other. And my dad had been everywhere because he was a frogman in the Navy. My mom had been nowhere. Her dad died when she was 11. Her mom had been 6, so she didn't really go anywhere. So we had cousins that lived in Arlington, Texas. And they invited us down for Christmas that year because they knew all the stuff we had been going through and all that. I'm like 7 at the time, 6 or 7. And we drove down from Pittsburgh. And we got to Arlington, Texas. I-20 was a 4-lane road. For those people that don't understand, I-20 is now an 8-lane road, or no, a 10-lane road. I-20 was 4 lanes at that point, that kind of stuff. So we came down, loved it. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a mechanic and a minister. So those jobs traveled very well. We talked about it, and at the end of the school year, my mom had gotten a teaching job in Arlington. My dad got a job working for a Ford dealership, and there we went. And we spent pretty much, I spent, with the exception of about 4 years, I spent the next 45 years in Texas. 40 years in Texas, because we ended up going back up there to take care of my grandfather for a couple of years. I came back after I graduated high school. We went back up, and for a little bit, I came back. And when I came back, I never went back to stay. My parents stayed there for a while, and then, of course, my radio ventures taking me wherever they've taken me. But yeah, that's where my Pittsburgh roots lies. My family. Being from Pittsburgh and being born in Pittsburgh and having those black and gold roots.
Where are we at with media in terms of all these things right now? I find it very difficult to speak with radio guys. They have a whole different mentality as compared to podcasters and other forms of media. Kind of even worse, I think, newspaper guys, like in terms of just communicating and reaching out to them in all cases. Where do you think we're going in the media space right now?
Well, the newspaper itself, the hard copy newspaper, is dying a very quick death. The number of subscriptions to hard copy papers has dropped 75% in the last 25 years. Everybody's going to the digital. The newspapers are still there. It's just that they're on their websites. So, the hard copy newspaper, same thing with a lot of magazines. Remember, you used to go even to the grocery store and you'd see half of an aisle full of magazines with everything from sports to gardening to puzzles to entertainment magazines or whatever.
I used to get my Sports Illustrated. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. You had Sports Illustrated, Sporting News, all that good stuff. And then you had 8 or 9 wrestling magazines, and you had all the Motor Trend and
PWI.
Yeah. So, that stuff, you can find it all online now. From the actual media end of things, I think local television, it's never going to go away, but it's kind of been put on the back burner. If you've noticed, network television shows like, and by network, I'm going CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox.
Right.
You're not seeing as many new shows as you used to. You're seeing a lot of spin-offs of previously successful things. I think a lot of that is twofold. A, you've got so many shows now on Paramount and Max and Netflix and Apple Plus and all these other ones that are floating around. But there's just not very many good new shows. So you've got a number of different incarnations of NCIS or a bunch of different incarnations of CSI or Law and Order, or because those have been successful.
Chicago Fire is on in my house like every day. Like they just never get enough of that Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and all of that fun stuff.
Right. You know,
Law and Order. How many times can they play Law and Order, man? I mean, come on.
But man, it draws some of the highest ratings out there. You know,
you can hear him yelling at me. You can hear him yelling at me talking about Law and Order. See, you see who's watching the Law and Order all the time.
I'm a Law and Order guy. I love Law and Order. I was not a big fan of Criminal Intent, but SVU and the original, I'm all in. NCIS, you know, CSI, you know, all these the FBI series that they came out with. All these different shows, they're doing well. But when you sit back and look, okay, you know, at comedies, it used to be that the networks were cranking out all these, you know, Seinfeld, Night Court, Friends, you know, all these different the Roseanne, you know, all these other shows that were coming in and out, and you know, just bombarding with new and creative stuff every year, and 10 or 12 different new shows. They're not doing that because the creators are going to Max and Paramount and Netflix and all, because they don't have all those stringent network parameters. The networks have loosened up a little bit, mainly in the language area of things, but something that you see put on Netflix or one of those realistically is a whole lot more adult oriented, I guess is the right word, than what you would find on ABC or CBS. When it comes to radio has become so fragmented right now. And I fight this every day. I really do, because what I do with the station right now is I handle all the advertising, the promotions, all that kind of stuff for the station. And I run into people every day. Nobody's listening to radio, which is the last thing that's nothing further from the truth. 93% of people still listen to radio every day, whether it's in your car, at the office, whatever. Okay. Do people still listen to Pandora? Sure. Do people still have their own little library of music that they listen to? Yes. Do people listen to podcasts a lot? Sure. I'm as guilty as anybody else. I've got 4 or 5 podcasts that I listen to every single week. Write it down, hands down, no questions asked. I got to have my book in the territory. Shout out to Mike Mills. I got to have my Cornette. I got to have my Bob Roop. And you wrestling fans will know who those last 2 guys are.
Cornette.
You know, Bob Roop was an old school wrestler.
I know him. Yeah, I know.
You know, back in the 80s, he was an Olympian, in fact.
Yeah.
But I have those too. It's becoming a case where there's so many different avenues. It's not like it was when you and I were in school, where, you know, we had the newspaper that had the daily box scores in it, and that was where we got our sports information. Instead of getting it up to the second, you know, somebody hits a home run, I know about it right now. It could be anybody hitting it. I can find out about it right now.
Hey, man, I used to pay for the 1-900 numbers for the sports, right? Hey, after the game is over, spend $3. Oh, wow, $3. Nowadays, I mean, you couldn't even, that's even crazy to even say. Somebody would pay for score, but we used to do it in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, like, okay.
Oh, yeah, and fantasy sports and things of that nature. Sirius XM has had a major impact on this, you know, with the specificity of what they do, because you have an entire channel, nothing but 80s, entire channel, nothing but, you know, classic rock. You have an entire channel of nothing but fantasy football.
Nothing but Backstreet Boys on one channel.
Right. And then you also have some TV networks that are on Sirius XM that simulcast on Sirius, like Fox News. You simulcast Fox News on Sirius XM. CNN, HLN, which is really weird. My wife listens to that all the time. She listens to Forensic Files. I'm going to repeat that for you. She listens to Forensic Files.
Women seem to like that. I don't get it either. I believe it. I don't know. Like they like people. Somebody like getting stabbed up or somebody beating up somebody's husband or something like that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We'll be laying here at night, and I'll flip over, and it's okay. She can name this episode in 3 seconds because she's heard them so many times on HLN. She knows them. But she wouldn't have access to those episodes all the time if it wasn't for that particular avenue. I say that to say simulcasting is another avenue that we get into. So breaking into media, podcasting has become a branch of the media. When you go to Super Bowl Radio Row now, you have podcasters on Radio Row. You have podcasters at big events on their Radio Row. You have podcasters all over the place. So it's kind of become another arm of the media. It used to be newspaper, TV, radio. Well, now you've got newspaper, TV, radio, streaming, podcasts, this one, that one. Yeah. So you are in the media. A lot of people don't realize it, but people that do podcasts that are geared to be quality and geared to be informational and geared to get something across, and not just for you to spout your opinion about something and have no basis behind anything, and not, it's just for you to be able to spout yourself. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the ones like you do, like what we do at Driving to the Top, like what the Jim Cornettes and the Theo Vaughns and the Joe Rogans and the guys like that do. Those are an arm of the media.
All right. One more thing. Scale of 1 to 10. How hard is it to really make money in media?
Which aspect of it? And I have to ask you that.
You're talking about, okay. I'll split it in two. Old media, give me a number. New media, give me a number.
Well,
TV, radio, podcasting in one bucket. TV, radio, newspapers, one bucket. Podcasts in the other.
The easiest way to make radio and media, or make money in media, and I never wanted to admit this, and Bill LeGrand, if you listen to this and you hear me say this, I will deny I said it. That's my first boss ever in this business. It's sales. If you can prove your value, if you can sell the station and sell yourself, or sell the podcast, or sell the stream, or whatever it is, if you can do that and be effective doing it, that's your fastest way to A, get your leg into the business, and B, make money in the business. Because I know a lot of guys, especially when I was really cranking with sales, that I was making double or triple what the on-air people were making.
If you have, I know you got grandchildren, so obviously you have children.
I have one grandchild.
Okay. Would you want them to be in media?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. No questions asked.
All right. Thank you, sir. And tell the people where to find you on the 15 shows that you're doing right now.
You're the one to spread that rumor.
Yeah, all of 15 shows. I don't need, it's not a rumor. I have a channel. You got 3 shows on, like you got NASCAR, you got wrestling, you got football, you got base. Yeah, you got all that stuff happening. Go ahead.
And the funniest part of it was this whole thing started. Adam hit me up on Facebook, and he said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming on and talking Pittsburgh sports?" Because he was doing the Pittsburgh show by himself. And I said, Okay, great. I figured it was a one-off, come into it once, I'm done. We hit it off and we started talking about doing that. And then, we started talking about growing the thing and how to grow it and all that kind of stuff. And then I brought up the idea of doing a NASCAR deal because with all the people that we have on Driving to the Top, we didn't have anybody doing racing. We had people doing all kind of other stuff. We didn't have anybody doing racing. So I brought that up and he said, yeah, sure. So then we got that going. And then we used to have wrestling, but that went away and we were talking about doing a wrestling show. So now that's in the works. And then, of course, we do open mic on Thursday nights. So it's a good thing. And I will say this, and it's definitely, I've been married once. I waited until I was 42 years old to get married. I've been married once. My wife gets it. She gets that I do what I do with radio and with the sports and all that kind of stuff. That's the only way.
That matters a lot. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Mrs. Ravori understands, begrudgingly sometimes, but she understands who I. Yeah, exactly.
Mary and I just had our 10th anniversary at the end of last month, and I promise you, I mean, she's been my engineer. She's been my promotions person. She's helped me set up remotes at radio, different events and that kind of stuff. She's been a part of a lot of this stuff too. But without having her and my kids doing what they've done to help me be able to do this stuff, you can't do it on your own, man. You know this. You were just saying your wife is your biggest support. You can't do this on your own, man.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Big Rich, for joining us here as well. Real quick, as of this recording, still no Shedeur Sanders in the draft. Tyler Shaw got drafted by the Saints above him. Unbelievable.
The third irrelevant quarterback to come out of Louisville. Huh. No, seriously. You guys, Lamar is his own. Everybody tries to compare Lamar.
Lamar
is his own animal. Lamar is his own animal.
He's one of one.
He really is. I mean, he has all these little pieces of all these other quarterbacks, and they melded it into one, and that's how they made Lamar Jackson. Eventually, his team will get it together and get him to a Super Bowl. Eventually, but I mean, to say that Lamar is not just an absolute stud, I'd be an absolute idiot to say that. At the same time, I'm still not going to pull for the Ravens in any way, shape, or form, except when you play that dirty, nasty rating. It's not a logo; it's a rating. That star is 1 star. It's not a logo; it's a rating. Yeah. Remember that.
All right. So, thank you. You said so many smart things, and we're wrong about the Steelers at the end. So we appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Raven fan. Thank you for joining us here on Driving to the Top. We had Rich here as well. Thank you for joining us here. Enjoy the day. Happy draft for those of you that are watching, that are still watching the draft. So thank you.